This is the muscle and nerve tissue review and practice. The instruction is at the beginning of each video, pause the video, and then try to identify what type of muscle tissue it is and whether it's a nerve tissue, and then play the video in order to get the correct answer. The first thing you'll notice about this tissue is these triangular shaped or a star shaped type of cells. Whenever you see these type of cells, you know you are looking at nerve tissue. All of these tiny black dots that you see everywhere, these are your neuroglial cells, which are the supporting cells for the neuron. The parts of the neuron you need to know is the cell body, which is this main portion. These branches that come off of it are your dendrites. And then this darker structure inside the cell body is your nucleus. And sometimes it's really hard to tell, but usually the longest branch coming off the neuron, that's your axon. One of the most obvious features that you see in this tissue is these dark bands that you see, these dark lines. These are called intercalated discs. And intercalated discs are only found in cardiac muscle tissue. Other features of cardiac tissue, muscle tissue, is the centrally located nuclei, and they're singular. There is one nuclei per cell. Another feature of cardiac muscle tissue is that they branch. Notice that this cell is cylindrical, and then is one, and then notice that it splits into two. That branching, that's indicative of cardiac muscle tissue. Lastly, it is kind of hard to see, but if you notice there are slightly faint lighter stripes running through this muscle tissue, and that is another feature of cardiac muscle tissue, striations. The first thing you should notice about this cell is that the cells are long, tubular in shape, they're cylindrical, and notice that they all run parallel to one another. Another feature that you can see is all these stripes that you see. These are your striations. Another features are multiple nuclei throughout on the outer layer of the muscle tissue. So all those features, cylindrical muscle tissue, having striations, having multiple laterally located nuclei, this is your skeletal muscle tissue. Again, the first thing you notice are these darker lines. Those are your intercalated discs. Next thing you notice is that this cell right here, notice how it starts off as one and they split into two. That's the branching. There are centrally located single nuclei per cell. And then you can faintly see the light color stripes, the striations. So cylindrical shaped cells, branching, intercalated disc, striation, single centrally located nucleus is an indicative of cardiac muscle tissue. Note the star-shaped looking cells. When you see shaped looking cells, then you are looking at neuron. So therefore, this is the nerve tissue. Features of the neuron, remember these branches coming off, those are your dendrites. The longest branch coming off is your axon. The main portion is called the cell body, and the dark structure in the middle is your nucleus. All of these tiny little dots that you see everywhere, those are your neuroglial cells, the supporting cells. The first thing you should notice about this tissue is the shape of the cell is a spindle shape, which means they are thicker in the middle and then they kind of taper off narrowly toward the edges. They too have a centrally located single nuclei per cell, and they do not have striations. Therefore, this tissue is your smooth muscle tissue. First thing you notice are these dark lines, which are your intercalated discs. You see cylindrical myocytes that branch. You see single centrally located nucleus, and you see the faint striations. All those characteristics are indicative of cardiac muscle tissue. The first thing you notice is the shape of the cell is that spindle shape, thicker in the middle, and they taper off toward the ends. Centrally located, single nuclei per myocyte, per muscle cell. The absence of striations, all those features are characteristics of smooth muscle tissue. Star-shaped cells or triangular-looking cells, those are your nerve cell or neuron. Parts of the neuron, you have the axon, which is the longest branch. All of these shorter branches are your dendrites. The main portion of the neuron is the cell body. The dark center is the nucleus. And then all of these tiny little dots are your neuroglial cells. In this tissue, it is kind of hard to see the shape of the cell, but it is spindle shaped. Notice that the nuclei are distinct, even though you can't see a lot of them. They are centrally located and they are single nuclei per myocyte, and there is no striations. Therefore, this is your smooth muscle tissue, and that's where it gets named. Notice how the tissue looks like a flow of smooth, like almost like water flowing. That's why it's named smooth muscle tissue. The long tubular or cylindrical myofibers or muscle fibers. Notice they all run parallel. Note the lines, the dark and light bands, which are your striations. Note the multiple nuclei along the edges of the muscle fiber. All those features belong to the skeletal muscle tissue.